What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Tuesday, August 1st, 2017. My Medicare officially kicks in as of today. Reminds me just how old I am getting while doing all of this stuff. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. And the corporate media today right now is going over the fact that the stock market has set a new record. And why isn't everybody as excited as we are? Well, because we all know it's all being rigged. It's just another fraud, illusion, by a government that controls us with illusions. So nobody's really paying attention with that. All right, let's get into the various domestic scandals here. Judge Napolitano was being interviewed on TV on the Fox Business Network and basically saying that the security risk was not just to the members of the House for whom the Aiea brothers actually were working. It was to everybody in the House of Representatives, because the Aiea had access to everything that was on that network. And now apparently Imran Aiea was selling that information to unknown parties. The FBI is investigating. And it's turning into a big, big stink. We have another spy scandal in the heart of the government itself. Now, interestingly enough, Austin Fletcher went to this year's Politicon in Pasadena, California, to interview some people, one of whom was Democratic Congressman Brad Sherman from Sherman Oaks, California. And after the inevitable jokes about Representative Sherman from Sherman Oaks, basically Fletcher asked a question about the Aiea brothers, Debbie Wasserman Schultz's IT staffers, who had access to the entire House of Representatives, including Sherman himself. Now, Sherman is a senior member of the House Foreign Affairs and Financial Services Committee. He's the top Democrat on the Subcommittee on International Terrorism, Nonproliferation, and Trade. And here we have this representative who makes $174,000 a year from the taxpayer, just turned and walked away. Didn't want to talk about it at all. It's another deep, dark secret about just how bad this really is. And as was the case with the potential espionage link to the email scandal, and for that matter, Hillary's email in general, article out of Rumor Mill News is asking, why is the corporate media so quiet about the Aiea arrest? I mean, this is all over the independent media. This is big news. And the corporate media are treating it like, it's no big deal. I mean, this sort of thing happens all the time here. And adding fuel to the fire is that, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, his employer, was working on those emails related to the DNC's attempting or succeeding in ousting Bernie Sanders and putting in Hillary Clinton as the candidate. This is already starting to look bigger than Watergate itself, but the corporate media is just looking the other way. And by the way, speaking of Watergate, when the Washington Post first started breaking that story, the rest of the corporate media looked the other way. They even attacked the Washington Post, saying, how dare you even imply that a president would do something like this? It makes no sense. And the Washington Post stuck by their guns, and eventually the story became so big the rest of the corporate media had to turn around and say, okay, yeah, I guess there was a creep, and there was sabotage, and there was break-ins, and all this other stuff. And sooner or later, the corporate media is going to have to come around to this. Now, I got a reader email saying that over on Gateway Pundit, they're talking about this lack of corporate media coverage, and they're saying the reason is because there is an attempt by Aieia's attorney to get the entire case dismissed on a technicality. Now, right now, the only thing he's officially been charged with is the bank fraud. And let's look at how all the players are linking up. Okay, Stephen Wasserman, who's Debbie Wasserman Schultz's brother, is overseeing the bank fraud case in U.S. District Court in the District of Columbia. So the court document showed an assistant attorney by the name of Michael Mirando. And as it turns out, Michael Mirando is married to Debbie Wasserman Schultz's niece, Joanne Wasserman. It's all in the family. It's a family affair. And apparently, a brand new FBI graduate, Brandon C. Merriman, is on the court document as well. Apparently, this is, he's a newbie. He doesn't have any experience at any of this. So here's what's going on. Congressional credit union loans are insured by the National Credit Union Association. And this error sets up a potential material flaw in the complaint to get the whole thing thrown out on a technicality. I mean, this is the biggest international spy case since the Israeli spies before 9/11, and it's been handed over to a brand new FBI agent fresh out of Quantico. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. But very obviously, a lot of people want this to go away, just like a lot of people wanted the email scandal to go away. Because the focus is on Trump and Russia, and we've got Robert Mueller, and he's digging, and he'll keep digging until he finds something. Because he's good friends with Hillary Clinton, and he's good friends with James Comey, and he knows that their future is in his hands. Now, frankly, Representative Frank, Republican, member of the House Judiciary Committee, is calling on Mueller to resign. Forget about Trump firing him, saying Mueller has to resign because he's violating a law governing the special counsel that specifically prohibits a special counsel from serving if they have a conflict of interest, which includes a personal relationship with any person substantially involved in the conduct that is the subject of the investigation or prosecution. And Franks cited this Fox News report from May that said Mueller and former FBI Director James Comey as longtime allies. Mueller served as the FBI Director when Comey was the Deputy Attorney General in 2003. Now, Mueller has already expanded his investigation into Russia's meddling in the 2016 presidential election because he hasn't found anything, to include any ties between the Trump campaign and Russia, as well as the president's decision to fire Comey earlier this year. Now, remember, the president has the authority to fire anybody he wants, anytime he wants, for any reason or for no reason. But I'll give you one right now. Last year, James Comey went down a laundry list of felony violations of Title 18 committed by Hillary Clinton and then gave her a free pass and said, we shouldn't charge her. She didn't mean to do wrong. But if you've read Title 18, intent is not required. Negligence, recklessness, carelessness also constitute felony violations. When you allow those classified documents into any unsecured area or computer, that's the violation right there. And Comey either did not know the law or was just counting on the fact that Americans don't know the law. But that's a reason for an incoming president to fire him right then and there. He didn't do his job. In fact, he overstepped his job by recommending no charges be filed because that's not the job of the FBI. The job of the FBI is to gather the evidence and put together a case and present it to the Attorney General. And then the Attorney General makes the decision whether or not to prosecute, which in this case was Loretta Lynch. Now, if you want something that is going to keep you awake tonight, okay, Clinton author Edward Klein was being interviewed by Steve Meisberg on Newsmax TV and said that Hillary is actually planning on running for president in 2020. He says it's absolutely certain, unless she's convicted of a felony, which would disqualify her. And it's a good thing I did not throw away all those Hillary graphics I made last year. But apparently Hillary, when she runs in 2020, will not have the endorsement of Barack Obama, who is actually throwing his political weight behind Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick to run against Trump in 2020. All right, let's take some phone calls. Don in Iowa, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, Mike, yeah, as far as these guys, Debbie Wasserman Schultz and these other Democrats that don't want to talk about it at all, but sooner or later they're going to have to say something. They can't. I mean, it's not going to go away. It's not like it's here today and then everybody will just forget about it. They got to confront it and do something with it. Now, this one guy, I saw one thing where the guy's lawyer came out with a bunch of vitriol that said it was all
racism and profiling.
Yeah, it was racism. That's what he said.
Yeah, that's it.
It was against just because the guy was an Arab, they were trying to be tough on him and stuff. But that doesn't hold water at all.
No, it doesn't.
In any way.
No, it doesn't.
This guy's going to go to trial, and that's not going to make any sense when he goes to trial. It's plead racism or something like that.
No, it isn't. But again, the reason Representative Sherman refused to answer any questions about the situation at all, with all of the representatives' computers being pilfered by the Aiea brothers and the information sent, we know that some of it went to the Muslim Brotherhood. It raises the possibility that the entire U.S. House of Representatives is now being blackmailed by a foreign interest. And the foreign interest first order is you get Aiea off the hook so he can come back home to Pakistan. This could have all been an ISI operation. And that may be why nobody in Congress wants to talk about it, is they're all being blackmailed. If they say the wrong thing, all of their deep, dark secrets are going to be posted on the Internet for everybody to see.
Yeah, but they got to at least say something. This is ridiculous. None of them are saying it. No Democrat is saying anything so far, right?
Well,
the press is helping them out by not coming up and asking, not demanding answers or anything like that.
Well, that's the job of the independent media, to actually get the facts out there. The corporate media's job is to control what you're thinking. And we have that from Mika Brzezinski herself over at MSNBC. But we're not here at Republic, or What Really Happened, to control what you're thinking. We're going to give you the information that we can find so that you can make good choices.
That guy did a good job there when he went... He did get the camera on the guy and asked him the question. The guy just said, "Well, now I can see who you are," and all that. And he just walked away. Yeah. But they have to. They can't just ignore it. I mean, this is a big deal, and they're finally digging into it. It looks like that. You think there'll be criminal charges against Debbie Wasserman Schultz?
I would like to see it happen, but again.
Maybe Hillary Clinton, too?
I think Attorney General Sessions is doing the same job for the Democrats that James Comey was. He's there to protect them. He's there to protect the narcocracy. Because if Sessions was actually going to do his job properly, Hillary would be in court by now.
Right. Well, Trump they were talking about firing Sessions, but so far that's not happened.
Well, I think it's going to happen during the congressional recess this month, right. Because then Trump can appoint a recess appointment attorney general without having to go through Congress for confirmation. See, that's Trump's biggest problem.
I hope that happens.
Yeah, I mean, everybody he wants to appoint for his White House, he has to effectively get the permission of all the people who are part of the problem, who are part of the swamp. People, like McCain. And they're simply going to sit there and vote down anybody who might actually be a threat to the narcocracy.
Well, there's definitely got to be some people thrown in jail. That'll just a few anyway. Maybe not Hillary, but somebody. Actually,
Hillary's at the top of the.
Thing is, if they dig into this at all, it's going to be like you dug a hole in the dam and it's all going to flood out. There's no way they can stop it.
Yeah, that's what they're worried about. That's why they're running around like just sticking their fingers in the holes in the dam and hoping the problem doesn't get any worse. But certainly, from my point of view, Hillary Clinton is at the very top of my to-be-jailed list.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to some guy today, some old guy, and I said, if I was, we were just talking BS about politics, and I said, if I was Attorney General, Hillary would be in prison pretty quick. And then he come up, he said he's a Republican, but he's not that kind of Republican. What kind of Republican are you? How can you be a Republican and not want to see Hillary go to jail? I don't understand that.
Well,
anyway, I'll let you go, Mike.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot here. I mean, this has got nothing to do with Republican versus Democrat. This has everything to do with a big pile of dead bodies that is getting bigger every day. It has to do with the Clinton Foundation being a slush fund. It has to do with pay for play at the State Department. It's got to do with 4 dead U.S. diplomatic personnel at the Benghazi consulate. It has to do with selling China militarily sensitive technology back in 1992. It has to do with the possibility that, Hillary and the Uranium One deal. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on of incredible degrees of corruption. And now we have this second story involving Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And they're trying to keep a lid on it all, but it is starting to come apart. It is our job as the independent media to do the job the corporate media pretends to do. Fully inform the public so that they can make good choices. And we have to keep up the pressure. It took us a whole month to force the Downing Street memo into the U.S. corporate media. And we can do it again. But we're up against an opposition that absolutely will go on pretending they don't see any problem. I've been asking about the possible espionage link behind the email server scandal. Was Hillary selling U.S. secrets using her weak private email server to deliver the product and her charitable foundation to collect and launder the money? And it's a legitimate question to ask with the history of the Chinagate scandal. And everybody in the corporate media and the government is just pretending, no, pish and tosh. How could you even think such a thing here? Let's see. We're going to go to the phones again. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I hate to tell everybody this, but nothing's going to happen to Hillary Clinton or Debbie Wasserman Schultz. They're above the law. Everybody should know that by now. You know, this is an oligarchy. You know, narcocracy, whatever. You know, it's like Rome or the British Empire. They're untouchable. This guy's going to die in the cell, or something's going to either. Nothing's going to happen.
Well, I disagree with you. I mean, they're trying to change the country in a bad direction, but here in the independent media, we have accomplished some really great things. For one thing, we have taken away the government and corporate media's ability to control what the people think. We've taken away their ability to lie with impunity, and that has severely crippled what they're doing. And obviously, if Hillary and her ilk truly thought they were above the law, they wouldn't be worried right now. But looking at Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she's clearly worried. Whether it's about possible legal prosecution or winding up dead in a small suburban park, we're not sure, but she's clearly worried.
Hey, Mike, I said this before. I think Trump should have cleaned house when he, like you said, but he needs to bring in the people who voted for him. Like, who cares what they know and what they don't know? You know what I mean? Because the people who say they know stuff, they don't know stuff, and then the people who the other people they bring in make a mess of everything. So I'd rather see Trump bring in some of his loyal, like people that voted for him. I'd rather have him surrounded with that.
Yeah, he needs to bring in people who from outside the Beltway, who don't come into the White House with these pre-existing compromising connections. You know, people who aren't being controlled through blackmail, if you can find any of those left anywhere in that part of the country.
Mike, did you talk about a rumor that somebody overheard John McCain talking to a bunch of Democrats, and he said, like, let's see him try to make America great again now?
Yeah, we mentioned that when it happened a couple of days ago, late last week, I think.
Yeah, see, that's how much they don't care.
No,
they really don't care.
No, they don't. And, you know, the funny thing is on Hannity, he's out there saying Republicans are apparently willing to lose the Senate next year in order to stop Trump's agenda and his followers. That's how intense this rivalry has become. All right, Dustin, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go back to the phones here. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, you got me with the Awan brothers again. The fact that the FBI assigns somebody right out of Quantico tells you what's really going on. Because, you know, the FBI is pretty much of a useless organization for most type of police and law enforcement work. But one thing they are is they got some of the top-notch white-collar investigators in the world. Okay? They basically get most of the recruits out of, you know, law school and accounting school as it is. The fact that they would assign somebody just out of the academy tells you what they really want to do. And this is where Sessions comes in. Because your new FBI director, I don't know who Trump, again, put in there. I don't know why he didn't put a guy like Dave Clark in there, you know, the sheriff of Milwaukee. And as far as Sessions goes, I don't know whether he's asleep, whether he's incompetent, whether he just doesn't have the energy to do his job. I don't know what's wrong with the man, but I thought Trump lit a fire in his butt, but evidently it didn't seem to work. So I hope what you're saying, that Trump can do something like that, if he really wants to get to the bottom of this stuff, and has to replace him during the next recess and put in a fire breather.
I'd love him to see put Trey Gowdy in there.
I don't know with Gowdy. He may be too close to the, you know, people in the Congress. I don't know if I totally trust. I'd like to see somebody from outside, really from outside, who really.
I'm not doing anything important for the rest of the year.
I think you got to be a liar. I'm not sure to be the head of the Justice Department. I have to be a, you know, Attorney General. I'm not sure. Yeah. I know you don't have to be an FBI director. You don't have to be a liar. But I do think you have to be a liar to be the head of the, you know, because otherwise I would love Dave Clark.
I was just joking. I still want head of NASA. That's what I want. I want head of NASA.
But yeah, gladly. The only trouble is there's nothing to fly anymore. It seems like now that they piss off the Russians, how are we going to get to and from that space station anymore now, you know?
Yeah, that's a real problem there. And plus, of course, the U.S. has been buying rocket engines from Russia because we've lost the capability of making large rocket engines ourselves.
We think we're going to beat them in a war. I mean, you know. Yeah. By the way, that's another thing Trump needs to do. He can still do it. He needs to veto that sanction bill.
He can't.
Explain to the American people exactly why he's doing it.
He can't. It passed with a veto-proof majority.
I understand that, but if you go to the American people and explain what Congress just did, they might put enough pressure. I know I called my congressman, what's his name, Mark Meadows. I told him if he voted for this thing, I was going to support a primary opponent. And, you know, I'm not going to support this kind of garbage. And I told his the hack who answered the phone. I called twice, a female hack and a male hack. And I told him, I said, you know, because they told me they don't know what he's doing. I said, you don't know what he's doing or something like this? Are you kidding me? So I want to see if Trump still might do it. If he at least has the ball to say, you know what?
No, the word out of the White House is he's just going to sign it because he doesn't want to do a veto fight with Congress, which he knows he's going to lose because that is going to be used against him by the corporate media and the Democrats. Over his inability to get along with Congress, although it's clearly Congress that is not willing to get along with the President of the United States of America. And as far as complaining to any members of Congress, at this point, recognizing the scale of election fraud in this country, it's clear members of Congress are not afraid of the American voter. They're just worried about whoever's counting that election. Those are the people they have to make happy.
Well, just like Stalin said, it doesn't matter who they vote for. It matters who counted the votes.
Yes.
You know? Like that's where we've come to in the country now. Damn shame. I'll tell you something, Mike. We got to do. You know, something's got to change. Or we're going to go right down the tubes.
I think we're going right down the tubes, and that may not be an entirely bad thing if you remember how much better life in Russia is today than it was under the Soviet Union. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go, and we got to take a break for commercials. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We still got callers on the line, and we're going to start with Roseanne in North Carolina. Aloha, Roseanne. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Michael. I was calling, and I'm really glad Mark from North Carolina mentioned Mark Meadows and Trey Gowdy, because that's what I was calling about. When I called for with information regarding Bond Brothers, Mark Meadows' office. They took the information. They gave me an email of where to email it to and whatnot.
Okay, Roseanne.
With Trey Gowdy's office,
Roseanne, could
can
you
hear
maybe
me?
could you speak a little closer to the microphone because your phone is your sound from your phone is getting garbled, and I think it's a compression and a volume issue. So just try and move your mouth closer to the microphone and tell us what you want.
Is this any better?
Much better.
Is this any better? Okay, I'm so sorry. So I called. There was a rumor on the internet about when Trey Gowdy was interviewing Jay Johnson on June the 21st, a couple months ago, for during the congressional hearing, and there was a rumor on the internet that Imran Awan was sitting behind Trey Gowdy, and it was exploding all over the place, going, "Oh my God, look, there he is!" And so I called Trey Gowdy's office and specifically asked him, "Who is that gentleman sitting behind Trey Gowdy?" And the lady that answered the phone, she's like, "Oh, that's not Imran Awan. That is a staffer from the Intelligence Committee." And it felt good to kind of, do a fact check on it, that they assured me it wasn't the Awan brother, which it didn't look like him anyway.
Well,
but then calling back,
hang on a second. Why would it matter if it was? I mean, people walk in and out of those hearing rooms, and they sit in the gallery and they listen to what's going on. And
they were right because they were right behind Trey Gowdy, which meant they would have been on the staff. It wasn't in the gallery. It was right behind Trey Gowdy. Do you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay, in the gallery, people can walk in and out, but when the congressmen are actually doing the congressional meeting or the congressional hearing, the people behind them are going to be their staffers. Okay. But that was the rumor. And so it was kind of nice to just do a fact check with Trey Gowdy's office. But calling and trying to give them information about the Awan brothers and the trial and the bank fraud and stuff like that, they weren't interested. They were like, you need to call your own congressman. And so when it had to do with Trey Gowdy having something to do with the Awan brothers, they were like, "Oh, wait, we've got to stop this rumor."
Yes.
But when you had information, "Hey, can you check this out?" they weren't interested. Like I said, Mark Meadows' office took the information, gave me an email, where to send it, whatnot. So Trey Gowdy was one of my favorites. But are we coming to find out that he's all just talk?
No.
I've never ever seen anything come out of any hearing.
Well, here's we've seen a lot of good information come out of the hearings, but Trey Gowdy cannot prosecute. He cannot bring charges against somebody. We're seeing Trey Gowdy and his entire committee are urging Attorney General Sessions to appoint a special counsel on this matter, and so far Sessions has ignored them. And you need to understand that there are certain rules and jurisdictions, and everybody in Congress, they get so many phone calls and emails and faxes, they basically only want to talk to their own constituents because that's who they answer to. And so I think the fact that Trey Gowdy's office said for you to call your own congressman was simply adhering to that because it is your congressman's...
It's a protocol.
Yeah, it's a protocol.
Well, I'm kind of biting my nails on Sessions. I was really into Sessions, really trusted Sessions, and it's been 8 months now and nothing. And something's got to give. The people need some relief.
I agree. I agree.
Law being in such disarray. But thank you for your time.
All right, yeah, you've got it. Basically what it is, and Trump, I'm sure, is just now realizing this, everybody around him is connected to that narcocracy. There is nobody that he can turn to help him try and make things better in Washington, D.C., who is not already under the complete control of that CIA, drug-running Clinton-Bush cartel. And that's why he's got to start bringing in people from outside. And he's got to start using that recess appointment authority that he's got to get some new blood in there that are not already tangled up, either financially or via blackmail, with this dark heart of the American government. Okay, we're going to go back to the phones. Boy, we got a lot of callers today. Kevin in West Virginia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine.
All right, yesterday you had some people calling in about thermonuclear war and about the elites being crazy enough to do it and everything.
Yes.
And it took me 24 hours to come up with a response. First off, the elite, yeah, they're nuts. But I don't think they're nuts enough to blow up the whole planet. I think what we're probably going to be facing is a biological and chemical, some type of chemical weapon or biological weapon. I don't think they're nuts enough to blow up the planet. They may let one or two go off like they did during World War II for the scare factor, but I don't think they're going to blow the planet up.
Well, 2 was all they had at the end of World War II. And then they started building more and more of them afterwards. And we would like to hope that people who are basically in charge of those nuclear weapons aren't really going to initiate their use. But we've got Paul Craig Roberts saying that there are already people in Washington, D.C. openly talking about a nuclear first strike against Russia and now North Korea. The real danger, though, is everybody's on a hair trigger alert, and there could be a mistake, a computer breakdown, some other kind of ridiculous nonsense, where there could even be a huge meteor strike on the Earth that was interpreted by the censors as a nuclear detonation, and then everything would start flying. You remember the movie War Games?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That was actually based on a real incident. Where at Cheyenne Mountain, somebody fed a training tape into the main computers in the control room without announcing it was a training tape. And everybody at those scopes were absolutely convinced there was a Russian attack underway. And they came very, very close to unleashing a retaliation before somebody ran in and said, no, it's a training tape, it's just a simple mistake. Of course, the movie added in this idea that it was all caused by a kid outside who hacked on in and blah, 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 blah. But it was based on a real incident, and there have been more than a few cases where somebody came very, very close to accidentally releasing a live armed nuclear weapon. And with everybody on a hair trigger alert like this, if there's a nuclear explosion anywhere, the bombs could start flying immediately.
Are we still under PDD 60, where we absorbed the first strike?
I do not know at this point, and I know that they were talking about a willingness to absorb a nuclear first strike on Alaska or Hawaii before they would, then there'd have to be another third one before they would start responding. I don't know that's in effect, and I understand there's a lot of open ground in Alaska, and they could set off a nuclear bomb up there and hardly anybody would notice. I don't know that they would be willing to absorb a strike here in Hawaii because this is the hub for all communications for the Pacific. And we got all these buildings down there and all the satellite dishes all over this island. You'd be amazed how many satellite dishes there are here where everything feeds through here and goes on out. And we've got all the command and control in Pearl Harbor. We have those control facilities that are still inside the Diamond Head crater. And, of course, we got this brand new bunker that they bored into the Ko'olau Mountains. So I don't think they'd be willing to just throw those away at this point. Certainly war hawks like John McCain would be out there saying, no, we're not going to absorb anything. We'll respond like with like. I think McCain wants, he goes to bed at night dreaming of actually pushing that launch button himself. And by the way, they're going to launch another test ICBM from Vandenberg tonight.
Wow. Well, that's all I have for you, Mr. Mike. You have a great show, and thank you for your time.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Kathleen in Paris. Thank you for waiting so patiently. Kathleen, what's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Thank you for taking my call. I'm back to the subject of the bill for sanctions on Russia and Iran and North Korea. I listened to an interview of Cynthia McKinney.
Yes.
And she at the end of the interview, which was quite good, you can probably still find it on YouTube, she talked about the 5 people who voted against it, and I thought they deserved to be mentioned. There were 3 from the House and 2 from the Senate. 3 people from the House, all Republicans, were Justin Amash, Jimmy Duncan, and Thomas Massey. Sorry, I didn't write down the states they represent. But the 2 from the Senate who voted against it were Rand Paul and Bernie Sanders.
I thought McCain voted against it.
Against the sanctions on Russia, Iran, and North Korea?
No, I'm sorry. That was the repeal of Obamacare. I'm sorry. I got confused here.
Yeah, I'm talking about...
You're talking about the sanctions. Yeah. Well, unfortunately,
right.
Those few people who voted against it, again, it passed with a veto-proof majority. Donald Trump doesn't want to have a veto fight. He knows he's going to lose, and so the word out of the White House is he's going to go ahead and sign the thing. And apparently there is actually language buried in the sanctions bill that anybody working for Russia Today inside the United States, or even just appearing on Russia Today, can get into trouble now. I mean, that's how much the Russia baiting is out of control.
Mm-hmm. The other thing, there was another thing buried in there that I wonder if you know what this is about. There was a 30-day oversight powers on President Trump. Who's doing? They're having a 30-day oversight?
Well, basically, that language was put on in there so the president couldn't arbitrarily lift the sanctions himself, which in the past presidents have been able to do. Along with putting on sanctions, they can take them off. And basically, this is a violation of the separation of powers doctrine, because Congress has now arrogated for itself the ability to keep sanctions in place no matter what the president wants.
I was really worried about this. I was really worried about this because there were these. Which ones? I think Russia and Iran said that they were going to react if this was passed, and I was pretty worried about it. And then yesterday's show, you talked about how the negative response of Europe. And so I was wondering if Europe and the rest of the world reacts quite strongly, can it be repealed? Because, it's really bad for everybody, the trade with the whole world.
It is. And the whole world is turning against I think the whole world is pretty much fed up with the U.S. government's arrogant attitude. And Congress, of course, can repeal the sanctions anytime they want. The question is, who is Congress really answering to? Well, they're certainly answering to the military-industrial complex. They're certainly answering to Israel. They're definitely adversarial to the president, and they don't care what the American people think. And I don't think they really care that much what the rest of the world thinks, because the ultimate aim is for the United States to basically rule the world as part of the New World Order. And so their attitude is, let them all complain. Sooner or later, we're going to be bombing them anyway.
Well, the other thing interesting about that interview with Cynthia McKinney was her response to the question. People are saying that Robert David Steele is what, in your terms, poisoning the well, so to speak. And how does she feel about that? And her attitude is that she's still, he hasn't done anything that would make her turn away from him. So the hashtag unrigged campaign is still on.
Yes, unfortunately, Hillary, and especially if she really is planning on running on 2020, they're going to be pushing Russia stole the election right up until she announces her campaign. They're not going to let go of it. That's what she's going to try and ride into a successful run for the White House in 2020. I was cheated last time. Now is your opportunity to make good for having denied me my birthright back in 2016.
Oh, dear. Oh, God. Well, thanks a lot, Mike, for all you do.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Peter in Los Angeles. Peter, aloha. Welcome to the show. Thank you for waiting, and what's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I'm calling about the whole Imran Aman or Alwan, whatever his name is, thing, and Wasserman Schultz. And Mike, I had such high hopes, and the primary reason I voted for Trump, and I thought the most important reason, aside from peace, was finally maybe getting a little accountability.
Yeah,
even
me
with
too.
Trump in there, you know, I mean, Mike, even with Trump in there, and a gimme case. I mean, a gimme case. Sessions is his oldest, you know, senatorial supporter, anyways, and a gimme case against Hillary, a gimme case against what was Huma Abedin,
Yes.
a gimme case against Anthony Weiner, a gimme case against really Wasserman Schultz, a gimme case against Donna Brazil. All these people, they were gimmies, and nothing is done. And this horrible revelation that you reported on about Wasserman Schultz's, brother and her brother-in-law or whatever that was.
The niece.
The niece. It just shows me, and the fact that nobody is talking about this in the media, nobody is talking about this in Congress, like your story on Brad Sherman out here in Los Angeles, who's a complete butthead. But at any rate, it shows me that they're so corrupt. It's so corrupt that anything, even in your face, complete felonious and treasonous and everything else, and nothing gets done, and nobody even calls them on it. But yet they can make up all that crap about Russia and Trump, and you know it gets all sorts of legs.
You know, John F. Kennedy had the same problem. I mean, he was never able to carry out his threat to dismantle the CIA because of what was politely termed bureaucratic resistance, which is the official bureaucratic machinery simply refused to go along with what the president wants, and Trump is dealing with the same thing. He is in many ways a new John F. Kennedy. I just hope he does not end up the same way. All right, Peter, you got any more?
Yeah, actually.
All right, I'm going to hold you through the commercial break. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Peter in Los Angeles, and you had more to share with us.
Well, yeah, Mike, not only are there all these complete gimme legal cases that you can't even get anybody, you know, to move on at all, from the FBI to the committees to, the Justice Department, the AG, even the president has only recently got down and said, let's do something, and he can't get it done. But then you have all this, the phony stuff, like the Russians, that gets legs. That gets 9 months of wall-to-wall coverage.
Yes.
And then you get, like, Iran, sanctions on Iran, sanctions on Russia, sanctions they're talking about sanctions on China. And it's like all this stuff is completely counterintuitive. It's like the government, not only is it doing everything backwards, it's like they're taking us on like a suicide death ride, and it's just unbelievable. But I don't know.
It really is, and it is very frustrating to see all these scandals where there is obviously evidence out there. I mean, certainly in the case of Hillary's Title 18 violations, it was frustrating to hear the head of the FBI admit she was guilty and then say, we're not going to prosecute her. And maybe they were trying to send a message to the American people that we do live in a two-tier society, that there are people who are above the law. But I refuse to accept that because that is not in the Constitution. I've read that Constitution from cover to cover, and there's nothing in there about there being a protected class of people who on whom the law has no effect.
You know, Mike, you're absolutely right. But the obviously the problem is that this government and these people are they've completely untethered themselves from the Constitution. The Constitution means nothing to them. And that's in our face. What's in the face is that they don't listen, like you were saying earlier. They just don't care about us. They're out there for the money. They're out there to get rich. They don't even care about the facade anymore.
Yeah, and, unfortunately.
You know,
but again, I counsel waiting it out because I do see a Soviet Union-style collapse on the horizon. simply because the world is turning against the U.S. The world is fed up with U.S. Tampering and interference. The world understands the United States is the aggressor. The United States is the threat to global peace. The United States is a threat to the global economy because it's the champion of the private central banks. And the American people don't trust the corporate media and the government anymore. The government may sit there and continue to spout their lies, but they're rapidly becoming impotent if you really think about it, because nobody's buying their propaganda anymore. I just got an email from a listener who was talking about these new robots that are going to be stocking the shelves at supermarkets, putting out a bunch more workers. And the U.S. government is out there saying the stock market is high and unemployment's only 2% and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, Peter, we're going to let you go. We're going to take a break for station identification. We got one more caller waiting on the line. Sherry will get your call right after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome to our show, hour number 2. And we're going to take one more phone call. Then we're going to close the lines for a while because I got to get some news out there today. Sherry in Texas, thank you for being so patient and waiting so long. What's on your mind today?
Thank you, Mike. Yes, the mainstream media may not care about us on one level, but they are listening to us, and this is the beautiful thing. I'm kind of getting excited because, we are America, and we don't have to fight for it again. We don't have to take up arms and take to the streets and all that. And that doesn't work anyway because they just call in, the bad guys, call in troublemakers to intervene, and people get hauled off in database that really were just trying to, do their civil duty and all this stuff. It's just, I'm so behind you on not fighting with fire. Here's when I look at the best solutions, number one, and I have a question regarding this, supporting the shows like this. I think we've reached a critical mass, like I've said, of enlightened people, of aware people, individuals, because I see it, and I said this, I think, the last time I called, I see it in my family and friends now. It's interesting. They listen, for one thing.
Yes.
They listen, and I get a little, they don't make a big deal out of it because no one wants to say you were right, but they'll go, yeah, I know, we know,
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, and my friends too. So here's the deal. Number one thing we need to do is support these shows. Now, I'm kind of a technophobe, and I don't want to just open my bank account number to, an internet thing. But if I went to a credit union, and there's a good one here, I've thought about doing this before when I wanted to transfer things out or have them come in, like I was thinking, well, it doesn't matter. The thing is, if I opened a credit union, like what I'd want to donate for the year, and then I gave the number and the information on your website, and then you can just feed into it, and it would be separate from my usual bank.
Well, that's definitely a way to protect your primary bank account here, but I think you're making it much more complex than it needs to be. If you're going to donate, just a simple check will be fine, or a money order. I've actually had people who are so afraid of the deep state, they send cash in envelopes with no return address. And I feel really bad because there's no way I can send a thank you note to these people. But I understand why they're trying to be anonymous. And it's terrible to live in fear of your own government that takes so much from you and does absolutely nothing for you. But just, really kind of keep it simple. When you're done talking to me, you can talk to our board op about how you can donate to RBN. And I actually honestly don't know if they have a PayPal account or not that you can do a donation through.
I wouldn't want to do that.
Okay.
Well, I could just write a check then. They could draw out monthly, though, from a credit union, though. That seems to me the best thing for me because this is the amount I'd give this year. Then maybe when I start stocking up for next year, I might be able to give more. Maybe I'd have to give less. But I really wouldn't have to do anything, and they could just take it out monthly. It seems like that would be the easiest thing for me to do than write a check every month.
Well, if you're going to put the yearly amount in that separate account, just send the yearly amount, and we won't.
Well, that's what I was doing before.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I sent it to you, though. See, I sent it to you.
Okay.
But I can find out through who to and just send it in one lump. I mean, I'll do that too.
Well, if you go to the republicbroadcasting.org website, there is a little icon for donate, and all the available information is there as well. And if you have any questions, stay on the line after we end the call, and I'm going to ask Mike, our board op, to pick up the line and answer any questions that you may have. Okay?
Okay. Can I go into a number 2 option here? To refuse services that exploit us. I know I'm going to be hit with an AT&T phone when they take away my landline, and I'm going to refuse it. And to let company knows why you want to refuse it. I think what they hear us say on these shows is the most important thing. But second to that, I think, is refusing, like Snowden was talking about our personal information. He said they can use it very creatively to exploit you, so be careful. And this is what they do. And I was looking at all the things I went through with my phone company, and I saw 2 incidences where they took my PIN number, and they put those new services on there when I moved over, and then they sent everyone the second statement instead of the first one.
Yeah.
Because it looked, and I was covered for both because I pay forward. Now, that's a different subject. But there's a way you can pay forward. They don't like it, but I'm covered every quarter when I pay, I'm covered on that month. So I had March and April paid already when I left Verizon. And I'm the only one that didn't get hit with a late charge because they sent April's bill first, and it was a little more padded up because they had socked it with services through fraud, deceit.
Yes.
And then here came March's second, and it looked like, I guess I paid for both of them, and everyone just paid once and got hit with a late charge. And if you write to the company and tell them, I think I'm on to you, we don't appreciate this kind of thing. I think that's a helpful thing. Thirdly, though, how helpful is it to write a congressman or call a congressman? Is that helpful at all? Do they just throw it?
Well, if you send an email, first of all, no human reads it. It's just scanned for buzzwords, and they tally up a spreadsheet about what people are concerned about. But definitely, I think Americans should be complaining to businesses a lot more, and you do have to be on your guard because a lot of companies, like cell phone companies, they'll try and sneak added services in there that you don't really need because they're all struggling to stay out of bankruptcy, and everybody's answer is always the same: loot the consumers, loot the consumers, loot the consumers. Anyway, Sherry, I'm going to say goodbye. Stay on the line. Mike will pick up, and he'll answer your other questions. We're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates rejoining our network. Let's get back to some news here. Boy, that was a lot of phone calls in hour number 1 here. Roger Stone is apparently now confirming rumors we were hearing earlier in the day. Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy is about to retire. And he's 81 years old, and he's not the oldest justice on the court. He's been talking about retiring for a long time. But apparently he held out until after the election in the hope that there would be a Republican president who would appoint a conservative replacement for him. So it looks like that's going to happen. And Trump is going to get his first Supreme Court pick. Story coming out of Counterpunch: did Hillary scapegoat Russia to save her campaign? And they're out there saying this Russia hacking thing has nothing to do with Russia, nothing to do with hacking. Basically, the story was a Democratic invention that was concocted to try and mitigate the political damage from all of the WikiLeaks emails that came on out. I remember back when they first came on out, and the talking heads on the corporate media were literally saying, it's illegal if you read those DNC emails. Don't you dare read those. You should be angry with Russia. They did all that. Don't you read those emails. And, of course, we all did. And we know there's nothing to this Russia hacking thing. It was invented to save Hillary's campaign and to save Hillary's face when she lost. Oh, the Russians hacked the election and stole it from me. So here's where the irony comes on in. It's almost Kafkaesque here. The Congress and Trump are hitting Russia with sanctions based on Hillary Clinton's fairy tale. It's an imaginary problem, and it's escalating the tensions between Russia and the United States. Now, remember, even the Washington Post is out there saying that this whole Russia collusion story is falling apart. Story out of LouRockwell.com, the new Russia sanctions come just as that hacking narrative it is supposedly in response to is falling apart. Now, over in Russia, the U.S. diplomats are furious. They're outraged that Russia has locked them out of two of their diplomatic sites. One of them was a dacha along the Moscow River. It was kind of a relaxation, vacation kind of place here. And the reaction is quite different from the Russians when Obama kicked a bunch of their diplomats out and seized two of their properties, and Russia stayed cool and calm and said, you know, this is inappropriate. And all these months later, Russia basically retaliates a measured response, and the Americans are acting like they're so being put upon. Well, sorry guys, you started all this nonsense about kicking diplomats out and seizing properties. You don't have any place to complain. Now the U.S. is threatening to slow down visa processing for Russian citizens, and Russia has already responded saying that Russia will slow down visa processing for American citizens exactly by the same amount. It's all very childish if you look at it, and we could laugh indulgently if we weren't talking about nations armed with nuclear weapons. Paul Craig Roberts is out with another warning, saying that the U.S. seems committed to a path of direct conflict with Russia. I mean, the tensions are already higher than they were during the Cold War. During the Cold War back in the 50s and the 60s, it was kind of a buzz in the background. Right now, it's just in your face. Now, the U.S. is still making a big deal over the recent North Korean missile test. North Korea apparently is going to have another test of a sub-launched missile coupled with a possible test of a nuclear device. But the American corporate media is out there saying North Korea can hit most of the United States, according to U.S. officials. Oh, they can hit almost all of the United States with the latest rocket. Now, to put things in perspective, the U.S. can hit and nuke anywhere on the globe. And the U.S. is the only country to have actually used nuclear weapons against another country. North Korea isn't the problem. North Korea simply does not want to be invaded, and they're trying to create a deterrent. The fact is that around much of Asia, Kim Jong-un's image is actually being improved by his standing up to the American bully. And here's the irony of it. This latest test by North Korea was a failure because apparently they were tracking and taking video of this test, and it broke up on re-entry. It hit the sea in pieces. And a lack of a re-entry capability basically means it was a failure. And apparently the previous test before that also had problems with its guidance. So North Korea is out there firing missiles and testing them to try and get the problems out of them. And the corporate media is like, it's a threat, it's a threat. No, actually it was a failed test here. Now the U.S. is saying it's time for China to act on North Korea. This is coming from Nikki Haley, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, basically handing an ultimatum to China. China must decide if it is willing to back imposing stronger UN sanctions on North Korea or not. Now, one thing you do not do with Asian cultures is hand them an ultimatum. You may not get the response that you want. Now, Trump and Abe have agreed to step up economic and diplomatic pressure on North Korea. And Trump has reaffirmed the U.S. ironclad commitment to defend Japan and South Korea from any possible attack. And he's starting by sending an additional 12 F-16 jets and 200 troops to South Korea. Meanwhile, Russia's out there calling for international calm over the North Korea situation and basically pointing out the U.S. is trying to shift the responsibility for this whole mess onto Russia and China. Almost trying to imply that Moscow and Beijing are somehow partners with North Korea's nuclear and missile ambitions. And yeah, that's what's going on. The U.S. is out there saying, if you're not with us, you're with our enemies. More and more people, though, are beginning to realize this has gone past Cold War. This has gone past rhetoric. There is a serious risk of igniting a war that will kill millions, possibly billions. And so we're seeing articles like this one at RIMF.com saying it is time to hit the reset button on U.S.-Korean policy. What should have happened is the U.S. should have backed off. When the Koreas were talking about reunification several years ago, the U.S. should have said, fine, great, let's end this whole mess. Formally end the war. Let South Korea help North Korea develop. That would have been the smart thing to do. But the U.S. got involved and kept the Koreas separate because a war with North Korea is seen by military planners as a potential backdoor to a war with China. And they're still looking at that. Now, apparently the Pentagon is getting ready to arm Ukraine with anti-tank missiles. So they're pouring the weapons into there, hoping that is going to heat up as well. The U.S. is talking about doubling the number of warplanes stationed in Lithuania to ward off the threat of Russia. I get so sick of hearing about that. The Russian threat, Russian aggression. We can see who the aggressor is with our own eyes. And by the way, we did an online poll at whatreallyhappened.com. Who is the threat to world peace? And we had up there Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, and the United States. And to nobody's surprise, the United States got the most votes by an overwhelming margin. Apparently, U.S. drones killed another 10 people in Yemen and Somalia, civilians. Now, we all grew up thinking that World War I and World War II were clean wars. We only killed the enemies, we protected the civilians. How different it is today. The so-called war on terror is basically killing everything in large swaths of the Middle East and Northern Africa. Entire cities, towns, and villages are reduced to smoking ruin and killing civilians by the thousands. And we should not be comfortable with that, especially the dead children. We should not be comfortable with a government and a war machine that is killing indiscriminately. And when you kill a non-combatant, it's called murder. The United States is getting a reputation of simply murdering civilians around the world by remote control, as if that makes it better. Okay, now then, we keep hearing pro-peace activists saying, when is the government going to understand this obsession to become all-powerful is not in the interests of the people? And at this point, it seems like the answer to that is never. It goes with the job. Power-mad imperial aggression seems to be injected into you if you win a seat in the Congress. Very few exceptions to that. It's about trying to make our private central bank happy by looting the wealth of... Okay, apparently over in Saudi Arabia, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is increasing pressure on people in Qatif to marginalize his opponents and basically consolidate his power. It's a power grab because apparently his father, the health is failing rapidly, and it's expected that Mohammed bin Salman will be the king of Saudi Arabia in the very, very near future. And that's funny. Bin Salman is doing in Saudi Arabia what Maduro is being accused of doing in Venezuela, and everybody gives him a free pass. We got to take a break for commercials. Back with more news after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And apparently Christopher Wray has just been confirmed as director of the FBI. And if the Senate has confirmed him, then it means he's promised not to step on any toes out there. Now, during the recent friction over the Temple Mount, a lot of things were going on, and the trust which manages the Temple Mount is accusing Israel of having stolen sensitive Al-Aqsa documents. And the papers feature data on 90% of the properties lying in Jerusalem Al-Quds Old City, and basically includes the title deeds. And the trust is now saying Tel Aviv could alter these documents in order to claim that all of these areas are actually owned by Israelis. So they wouldn't have to declare the Temple Mount part of Israel proper, but they could simply say, look, this land is owned by Israel, and therefore you guys have to get out. So over in Iran, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is calling on Muslims to oppose Israel over that Temple Mount. Remember that Al-Aqsa Mosque, that's the third holiest site in all of Islam. And again, because the Temple Mount is technically in Palestinian territory, Israel has no authority to go in there and set up scanners and cameras and the rest of it. And to put this in context, imagine that you go to your place of worship this Sunday, or Saturday if you're a Seventh-day Adventist, and you get there and there's a brand new chain link fence around it, and somebody who has no right to be there has just walked on in and said, we're going to manage security at this facility, and only people older than 50 are going to be allowed in. That's basically what happened. And remember, Ehud Barak is out there saying Netanyahu is doing this to distract everyone from his problems with the corruption that are surfacing. And up in Turkey, a huge anti-Israel protest taking place up there. And this brings us to the story of Gilad Atzmon, world-class saxophonist. He's an author. He's got this Being in Time he wrote, and it's a brilliant, brilliant book. And apparently the Israel supporters, who are aware that they cannot actually successfully debate against Gilad Atzmon because of the amazing scope of his knowledge, now they're going back to their old dirty tricks. These so-called anti-Semitism organizations are calling all over Great Britain to venues that normally would host jazz concerts by Gilad Atzmon, and they are pressuring them to basically prevent Gilad Atzmon and his band from playing there. And they're having a tremendous amount of success. They're trying to shut Gilad Atzmon down as an artist, as a musician. They're trying to destroy him economically, because he needs those concerts. Yes, there's ticket sales for the concerts, but those concerts promote his album. And this is how Israel supporters like to behave. If they can't win the argument through logic, law, and the facts, then they sabotage you. Now, down in Venezuela, they are on the brink of all-out collapse. And apparently, Venezuela opposition leaders Leopoldo Lopez and Antonio Ledesma were taken from their homes in some kind of a raid. And everyone's pointing fingers at Maduro, and it may well be him. But look at it from his point of view. We've got the head of the CIA saying this is a destabilization, regime change operation underway. So these opposition leaders, if they're cooperating with the CIA, that's technically treason. And they need to be arrested here. So over in Syria, apparently ISIS tried a large counterattack in southern Raqqa and failed. They got pushed back again. And following Donald Trump's ordering of the CIA to cease supplying materials to the so-called rebels, a lot of them are now defecting back to the government of Syria. We'll be right back after these commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, the U.S. is announcing that the U.S.-led coalition has destroyed a Daesh chemical weapons factory near Deir ez-Zor. Huzzah, huzzah, we've done a good thing. And what they've actually done is admit that the chemical weapons attacks are coming from Daesh and that they've known it all along. Now, apparently 8,000 of the rebels have agreed to leave the Syria-Lebanon border zone in Arsil as part of the new ceasefire deal between Hezbollah and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. So that whole thing is winding down. They're still trying to go through a prisoner and body swap. That's kind of stalled on some logistical areas. Now, over at whatreallyhappened.com, we have a video from Russian television. And it answers a question that was asked back when Donald Trump launched those 60 Tomahawk cruise missiles at that Syrian air base. Now, one of the Tomahawks failed coming out of the tube, so 59 went into Syria. Most of those missed the airfield entirely. The Tomahawks that hit the air base didn't hit anything important, and it was back in operation in less than 24 hours. And at the time I asked the question, is Syria in possession of some of this potent Russian electronic warfare? And according to this video, yes, they are. And we know that the Russians are really out there with electronic warfare. They paralyzed the Donald Cook. Apparently now they can prevent a Tomahawk from hitting an intended target. And there's one thing about electronic warfare. Once you've spent the money to develop it and build it, the cost to use it is relatively minor. It's just electricity, as opposed to launching a Tomahawk attack where every time you press that button, it's a little over $1 million. So electronic warfare is actually quite cost effective. And the Russians are apparently very, very good at it. And I don't think we've begun to see what it's really capable of, because I'm pretty certain Russia doesn't have their top-of-the-line hardware in Syria right now. Nor did they use it on the Donald Cook, because the Russians are going to know the Donald Cook is going to be running recorders of what's happening on the radio bandwidths in order to analyze what's coming on in. Now, believe it or not, after all this time, the White House is dropping hints that it may be time to pull out of Afghanistan. The U.S. has been in there 16 years. And it's clear at this point they're not going to accomplish anything. Even the installed puppet regime doesn't want them anymore. There's no clear strategy for what could be described as victory in Afghanistan. Now, this is going to be kind of interesting. I'm certain somebody will mention, well, there's that oil and gas pipeline right-of-way that was proximate cause of the invasion of Afghanistan. And Trump will just say, well, the oil companies are going to have to pay whatever the Afghan government wants to charge them for the right-of-way. The real touchy issue is, how do they break to Donald Trump that America's drug lords are dependent on the opium coming out of Afghanistan? In theory, he doesn't know. And I expect that he would react to that news with a tremendous amount of shock. So that's going to be a tough sell on that. But I can imagine there's going to be a lot of pressure about, we have to stay in Afghanistan, we have to show our resolve, we have to show the world that we're going to go on banging our thumb with a hammer just to prove that we're tough. Iran has now gone to the United Nations saying that the new U.S. sanctions on their economy represent a breach in the P5+1 deal. And Iran is complaining to the Security Council, saying that it is clearly a violation of the deal because Iran has kept their side of the agreement, and the U.S. does not really have any justification for throwing more sanctions onto Iran. The U.S. hasn't even really lifted all of the pre-P5+1 sanctions. It hasn't unfrozen all of the Iranian assets. Now, of course, this is purely for show, because whatever the Security Council decides to do, Nikki Haley will veto it. But the world is turning away from all of these sanctions all over the place. The German economic minister Brigitte Zipries is saying that Berlin considers the new U.S. sanctions on Iran are a breach of international laws. Now, over in Russia, ever since the sanctions, German exports to Russia have increased by 20%. Europe is not going along with these sanctions. And if the U.S. is the only country that's obeying these sanctions, they're going to harm the U.S. more than they harm anybody else. All the U.S. is doing is cutting off markets for our products, cutting off sources of products for our stores. And these sanctioned countries, they're simply turning around and they're making deals with other countries. It is a stupid, economically suicidal policy. Now, as I said before, the corporate media is out there saying the stock market has hit a new record high. Huzzah, 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 get out the dancing girls. Well, if you actually replot the stock market, taking into account the rate of inflation, the real rate of inflation, not what the government says it is, you'll find out the market has actually been trending down for several months here. But the stock market rally has been led by Amazon. I mean, they've had an epic 2.5-year run. It made Bezos, at least for a short while, the richest man in the world. But actually, Amazon sales are starting to slow down. Remember the other day we ran that story about how Amazon is being used as a scapegoat for retail-mageddon. Oh, we can't stay in business. Amazon's taking all their business away. And I said, no, the problem is people don't have money to buy stuff. And now it is beginning to hit Amazon as well. Their sales are starting to slow off. Peter Schiff has come on in about Trump owning the stock market bubble, saying the Federal Reserve now has their fall guy for the coming crash. Oh, we, the private central bank, didn't do anything. It was the stock market. It was Donald Trump, and blame him. And that's exactly what they're going to do. When the crash hits, they're going to blame Donald Trump. And this crash has been a long time coming. There's a lot of people who are to blame, who let their greed, their money junkyism, just take control of them. And behind it all, of course, is the fact that private central banking, by design, creates more debt than money with which to pay the debt until the system breaks down, which is where we are right now. And everybody's looking for some place they're going to point their finger. Oh, it's Trump's fault. It's his fault. It's the stock market. We bankers, we would never do anything wrong. All right, we're going to take some phone calls here. Tom in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, good day, Michael. That was great. Yeah, you brought that up about they're going to collapse the market, and Zionists are going to do that against Trump. They're going to blame it all on Trump. You're absolutely right on
it's
that,
not
100%.
being done deliberately. They can't stop it from happening. That's the problem.
Well, yeah, I agree. Well, Yellen's she's part of the plot, but yeah, Michael. First off, you were talking about a few minutes back about how they can crush you. I'm sure you heard of Roger Waters of Pink Floyd.
Oh yeah.
Well, he was in South Florida last month, and every news station, local station, was telling people to boycott his concert and this and that. He's anti-Semite and all this. And I actually didn't even understand what did Roger Waters do to tick these people off. What did he do? Something to LGBT. What was they didn't even explain actually on the TV what this guy had done. So I was trying to look for a story. What has Roger Waters got these Jewish organizations so mad about? What did he do? I don't even really know.
He expressed support for the Palestinians, and said, Israel. That's it. Right. That's all it takes, and they will set out to absolutely ruin your life, and nobody is beyond their reach.
And also, Michael, on today they had the news. Bernie Sanders has 3 houses in Connecticut worth, I think it was like $1.8 million. You got Maxine Water has a house out in California that she doesn't even live, not even in the district where she's from, worth $4.5 million. You got all these Democrats, Republicans too, but you got all these Democrats with multi-million-dollar homes. It's a joke. It's really a joke what's going on. And Bernie Sanders' wife is being investigated by the FBI, but they keep that out of the news. You notice?
No, actually, that actually has been covered in a small amount by the corporate media, because I think if Hillary is really going to run again in 2020, she does not want to be running against Bernie Sanders in the primaries.
Good point. Right, absolutely. But we'll see. But another thing, Michael, one more thing, and I'll let you go. You keep on the show. This Arab guy over there in Australia saying that white men are impudent and they're not having kids and they're all getting drunk and all that. So we're going to take their women and we're going to have children with. We're going to bang their women and have kids with them. The Arabs telling Australian. I'm saying to myself, I wonder if the Arabs in the Middle East go around saying we're going to take all the Jewish women we can in Israel and bang them and have babies with them. We're going to, and all the Jews are not even having sex with their women, so we're going to populate their. We're going to do that. I wonder how that would happen and how that would go down in Israel. It's all those Arabs over. And by the way, they don't even get no immigration hardly in there with these Arabs. Germany's being flooded. They're flooding all these European countries, but Israel doesn't take them. But I was wondering if an Arab were to come out and say, yeah, we're going to take as many Israeli women we can and have children with them because they don't want to procreate. What do you think about that, Michael?
Well, it's a very outrageous and offensive thing to be saying, and unfortunately, we're starting to hear it from a wide variety of places that whites are fading out as an ethnic group. Everybody's going to be blended in the future. It's part of that globalist New World Order, to get rid of ethnic identities, except, of course, for the Jews in Israel, who steadfastly insist on maintaining their unique racial religious identity, even as they are championing the cause of blurring the rest of the world together. In fact, Israel is already starting to work on changing their law of return, which up until recently it's been, if you are of the Jewish faith, you are allowed to immigrate to Israel, no questions asked. And then they had all these Ethiopian Jews come on up there, and that caused a bunch of problems. And so now Israel is trying to be more restrictive and say that you have to be from a recognized Jewish group, like certainly the Ashkenazi are at the top of that list, the Orthodox, the Sephardic, and these other groups, to basically thin them out. And they're talking about finding a way to get the Ethiopians to go back to Ethiopia.
Right. You're absolutely right. Everything you say. Michael, one more thing, though. Can you imagine if Donald Trump were to come out and say, since we're sending all these illegals out of this country, we're going to start paying white women in this country to have children. We're going to give them $20,000 to have a kid. For each kid they have, they get $20,000. Can you imagine if that would happen on the news networks?
Well,
that'd be amazing.
No, they would equate that with Adolf Hitler's program for the German mother. They handed out medals. Yes. The Honor Cross of the German Mother. And with that medal came special government-provided services and a lot of special perks that weren't available to German women who were either childless or who had children that were not considered racially pure. And remember, Adolf Hitler...
Michael, the Jews do that in Israel.
Hang on. Yeah, well, they do. And what people tend to forget is that Hitler got that whole idea of race hygiene from the United States in the 1930s, the eugenics movement.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, Michael. And the Jewish state of Israel pays their women to have children. You know that.
Yes.
Absolutely. But here, if you try to do that, oh my goodness, it'd be unbelievable. It'd be unbelievable. And it's funny you have this one congressman in Illinois, that Gutierrez, saying that Donald Trump's this and that. this guy, I mean, the stuff that spews out of that guy's mouth, how did that guy get elected? That's another amazing thing to me.
Yeah, you look at you look at some of those people who are in the Congress, and you have to scratch your head and say, did the people of this state have nobody better that they could run for the office?
Absolutely. It's unbelievable. And like you brought that guy Schiff up. What a character that guy is. He's a deep stater all the way. Adam Schiff. Oh, my goodness. I don't know, Michael. We'll see what happens. It's going to be an amazing journey in the next 3 years. So.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. All right, Tom, we're going to let you go. We're going to switch to Alex in Florida.
Have a great day.
Aloha, Alex. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael, Trump needs to come out with JFK-style secret society speech. He needs to say it.
Yeah, that would be a good one to bring back here. Right now, though, I think Donald Trump went in there to drain the swamp, and the swamp monster is just beating the crud out of him, unfortunately. They've got him all tangled up with all this Russia-Trump nonsense. He's surrounded by enemies, as JFK was, and he finds and he gets rid of one saboteur and replaces them, and all of a sudden he realizes he's just got more of the same thing. And I'm pretty sure that this Christopher Wray is going to be more of the same, because if the Senate confirmed him, it means they know that Wray is not going to step on certain toes.
Yeah, that is so unfortunate. So I guess that we're just going to have a state that's basically a dictatorship. And
we're there. We're in a fascist economic dictatorship. And again, though, there are strong parallels between the collapse of the Soviet Union and what I'm seeing in this country right now. And I think when the economy crashes, it'll take the federal government with it, because they're not going to have any idea what to do other than you people have to give us more of your money. And we don't have any. If we had money, we'd be down there taking advantage of the low prices on auto sales and things. But we're tapped out. The money junkies got it all, and nobody has a plan on what to do with it that they can get past the money junkies, because the money junkies aren't going to give up a single penny of it. These are billionaires who absolutely will not let go of a single penny.
Yes, it's very unfortunate that there was a book called the Bible, that a lot of people seem to think that it is a truth. And I love Jesus's way of loving one another and going up against the barbarians of his time.
Okay, Alex, I'm sorry. I got to let you go. We're hitting a commercial break. We'll be back with another phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to take another phone call, then we're going to go back to doing the news here. Glenn in Philadelphia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I called about the cruise missile on the airfield. But first, actually, I wanted to mention, I know you're aware of this and you keep things moving along, but as callers, I would suggest that we as callers need to be cognizant of self-limiting a little bit. Because when you're waiting in the queue, and the callers before you're going, and another thing, and another thing, and another thing, and 10 minutes later.
Well, you know
you need to self-limit a bit.
There are some callers who are in love with their own voices, but you're right. Just as a matter of respect to the audience and the other callers, just have one subject that you want to talk about, and then make way for the other callers, because that way we'll get more of the program done here. You raise a very good point.
Right, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, that was your one topic.
About the, just one more thing. Exactly. Boom. Hoisted on my own petard. Okay. But about the missile strike. You know, I think that missile strikes serve multiple purposes. And you were talking about, Syria having the Russian technology and that sort of thing. It accomplished numerous purposes. It helped Donald Trump to lose his warrior president virginity and get a good, violent, military action in there under his belt. Mm-hmm. It gave him a chance to evaluate the efficacy of older weapon stock, they're sitting around, which ones misfired, which ones worked. It gave the arms dealers a chance to sell new missiles. And it might have been sort of a wild weasel element in the sense that, it gave them a chance to disclose what technologies might be used against the missiles, and they may have gotten some data to help them analyze what, caused those other missiles to go off target. And like you said, just figure out the frequencies and what was going on there in terms of computers and radio emissions and stuff like that. So I suspect they actually did derive, and they gave them notice that this was going to happen, so it gave them a chance to flip the switches and turn on any anti-missile devices. So, I think there's a multi-purpose information gathering, jaunt, as well as a chance to say, now he's, like they even said, he's a president because he's shown he's willing to attack somebody.
Yeah, that was funny how McCain just did his 180. Well, you're absolutely right. Everybody's going to handle this event based on what their particular function is. Trump gets to show how butch he is, along with the Moab attack that followed shortly thereafter. Certainly from the Syrian point of view, they protected their assets. Certainly from the Russian point of view, it was a real-world combat test of their electronic warfare systems. And obviously, the United States is going to be trying to figure out exactly what did happen that took those Tomahawks off course. It probably had to be a multi-pronged attack because the Tomahawk has multiple overlapping guidance systems, supposedly to make it more accurate, which obviously were vulnerable to whatever the Russians are doing.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, it's sort of like Wild Weasel, where the Wild Weasel aircraft goes in, gets them to turn on their SAM sites, and then they can find out where they are on the map.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Talk to you later. We're going to take a break for station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Getting on back to the economic news, GM auto sales crash, dealer inventory near all-time high. And boy, if we actually had money, now would be the time for us to get a newer car. And like I said, we've got this old abandoned drive-in movie theater at the bottom of the hill. Was being used as a flea market on the weekends for a while. Now it's being rented out as an overflow lot for the island car dealers. And you look through the fence and there's just all these rows of identical new cars just sitting there waiting for somebody to come and buy them. Now, gear and apparel company Under Armour is announcing layoffs as their sales slide. The economy is locking up because it's been perverted into a system that takes money from the American people and gives it to the money junkies, and there's none coming back. Now, everyone is warning that there is a real estate bubble again because the real estate prices are going up even though the demand isn't there. And the reason is more and more millennials are still living with their parents. And you can dismiss them as being snowflakes and all the rest of it, but basically 1/3 of 18 to 34-year-olds are still living with their parents. And it's easy to dismiss as laziness or a sense of entitlement or lack of ambition. They're coddled, they have no initiative. And those may be factors, but the reality is they are all carrying gigantic student loan debt. Now, a while back, I put out this little model that says there's a finite amount of money out here in the general population. And whenever anybody does anything to grab a larger share of it for themselves, in this case the student loan providers, then it's going to basically result in losses somewhere else. In this case, the buyers and renters of new homes. The actual amount of revenue flowing remains a constant because there's no new money coming on in, because the high-paying jobs have all gone. They've been shipped overseas, or they've been automated. And it doesn't take a PhD in economics to understand that before you can take money out of the middle and working class, there must be a mechanism to put it in there. And that has vanished. And everybody in Wall Street and Washington, D.C. is still worshiping at the altar of Adam Smith. If I'm personally greedy, it will improve the system as a whole. And, of course, Nobel Prize winning mathematician John Nash disproved that in his doctoral dissertation. Took 100 years of economic theory and stood it on its head, but nobody wanted to listen to him. Because what came out of his analysis was the best way to run an economy is everybody has to look at the economy as a whole and work within those restrictions, or they're going to cause a lockup. And that's where we are right now. Getting on over to Europe and the immigration. Pro-New World Order, pro-immigration, pro-globalist Angela Merkel is literally being warned by people within her own government that it's time to crack down on the migrant situation following this deadly knife attack in Hamburg. It really is spinning out of control over there, which is, of course, what George Soros actually wants. Now, as you know, Greece has really felt the wrath of the global bankers. And even though half of Greece's debt was created through fraud between Papandreou and Goldman Sachs, from the point of view of the bankers, debt is holy, debt is sacrosanct. We don't care if it was created through fraud without your permission. You will pay us what you owe us. We got that from Christine Lagarde. We don't care. We have it on paper. You owe us this money and you will pay us. Well, now it appears that Greece, learning their lesson from the difficulties surrounding Brexit, is planning to pull Greece, they're planning to pull out of the Eurozone, but they're keeping their preparations secret. And unfortunately, they're not secret any longer. Tsipras' plan is starting to leak on out. And of course, Brussels is in a panic. You can't leave us. You can't leave us. We need a divorce payment. We need this. We need rules. So the EU is falling apart, and the globalists are in a panic because that European Union was a stepping stone. They were going to start welding separate countries into these regional unions, the European Union, the North American Union, whatever, and then they would merge all those unions together and they would have their global government. And it's not happening. And certainly it's not happening for two reasons. The economic predations of these global banks like the IMF, the ECB, the Federal Reserve, and the backlash from the open borders policy. And all the corporate media propaganda and all the advertising, it's not convincing people that this is a good thing. And people everywhere are digging their heels in and standing in sharp contrast to the agenda of the globalists. It's triggering a strong nationalist movement in virtually every country where this has happened. This is our country first, our people first. And there is nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying, I'm putting my country first ahead of the interests of any other country. I am putting the citizens of my country first ahead of the citizens of any other country. It's called patriotism. And they're trying to make a bad thing out of that. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network here. Now, Trump has scored a win on immigration enforcement down in Texas. And Trump persuaded state and local authorities to perform the functions of the federal immigration officials. And basically, this is a deal that they're trying to get other jurisdictions to crack down on those sanctuary cities. Now, the first thing they ought to do on the sanctuary cities is arrest those mayors for violating Title VIII of the U.S. law. Now, 18 Texas counties have signed on to this deal, and local agents in the sheriff's offices will be trained to check if the people they have in custody are in violation of U.S. immigration law, and then notify the federal authorities of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And this is a really good thing. Now, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who's been fully on board with enforcing the immigration laws, he's actually been hit with a contempt of court charge because supposedly his activities go against a court ruling that said we can be a sanctuary city, even though that court ruling is a violation of the law. So this fight is far from over. Article out of AntoniusAquinas.com. Can Germany be made great again? And it's basically saying the Germany that the German people know and love is vanishing. Germany is being demographically destroyed right before the eyes of the world. And this open borders policy championed by Angela Merkel is leading to intense financial strain, widespread crime, property destruction, increased illnesses, and the erasing of German culture. And people are getting angry over this. Frankfurt, Germany, the Germans are now a minority there. Now, apparently, there's a bit of a fight over Austria's call for more sanctions against Belgium and Poland because they want to close their borders and they want to do this and they want to do that. So the EU member states are already fighting amongst each other. I don't see the EU being able to hold together much longer. I think we're coming up on a moment where everybody's just going to say to heck with this, and they're just going to quit listening to Brussels. And Brussels can throw a tantrum, and they can cry and whine and scream all they want, but the fact that they have never created their grand army of the European Union, there isn't a thing they can do about it. And the EU member states ought to make that move before Brussels can create its own military force to go back in and take these countries over one by one. And let's see, let's getting into the area of political correctness. Cambridge student Jason Osamid Okandai, age 20, is being investigated by police over claims he tweeted that all white people are racist. And he praised anti-racism protesters who clashed with police on Friday. Now, saying that all white people are racist is like saying all blacks are lazy or all Hispanics are thieves. Some are, some aren't. There are some white people who are racist. There's a lot of white people who are not. Applying that broad general brush, you're being just as racist as the people you claim to oppose. Now, here's a sad story. I was very upset when I read this. Over in Wapakoneta, which is Neil Armstrong's hometown, apparently there was a break-in at the Armstrong Air and Space Museum. And several items were taken, including awards and plaques. The main thing that was stolen was a solid gold replica of the lunar module that landed on the moon. And it's about 9-10 inches high. And unfortunately, the museum directors are concerned that the model was not taken as a collectible, but to be melted down for the melt value of the gold in it, which is going to be considerable. And it's another reminder that we seem to be losing our moral core in this nation. This isn't just a theft of property, it's a theft of history. Now, a second Baltimore police officer has now been caught planting evidence. And they're still trying to clean up the mess from that last one. They've already had to basically throw out 34 cases, 20 of which the people were already convicted and in prison. They're going to have a heck of a lawsuit on their hand. Now, interestingly enough, up in Sandpoint, Alaska, last month, July, over a period of 3 weeks, the entire police force quit. The town does not have any authoritative presence. Oh my goodness, crime will run rampant all over the place. Hasn't happened. There hasn't been an outbreak of lawlessness. There hasn't been an increase in crime. Things are actually flowing along rather smoothly. Of course, people in Alaska all have guns. But it seems here's a town where the police force wasn't really necessary. And there's a lesson to be learned there. Because certainly down here in the continental United States of America, the police force have become a liability. They're not stopping the criminals. They're taking away our guns. And through civil forfeiture, they're stealing more from the American people than all the burglars, muggers, and thieves put together. Now, you've heard all about white privilege and all this other stuff, and it's a way to make people feel guilty for how they were born. Well, there's a new one out. This is coming from the University of Iowa, and their student newspaper had an article saying they've discovered a new special privilege by which intelligent people are born that way, by accident. They don't deserve to be more intelligent. And it's called cognitive privilege. And so just like they're saying there have to be laws to prevent white people from taking advantage of their white privilege, now we have to work against cognitive privilege. The dummies are taking over. I don't know about you, but when I'm flying in an airliner, I want the smartest person possible at those controls. Like Sully, Miracle on the Hudson. If I'm in the hospital, I want the doctor to be the smartest person they can get. And we're in dangerous territory here because demonizing intelligent and educated people, that happened in Cambodia, where they literally created a political hysteria where people were being murdered just because they were intelligent. Our entire society is being turned upside down. New release of emails published by WikiLeaks, this one about the French government. Apparently, a senior member of President Macron's party was outed for purchasing illegal recreational drugs. Ah, those French. Should have come over to Colorado. Got your drugs there. It's legal. And apparently Colorado has pulled in over $500 million in tax revenues from the legalized sale of cannabis. But Jeff Sessions is out there. We will enforce the federal laws. It's a horrible chemical substance. You should not be allowed to have it. Now, we've all heard about the documentary Vaxxed, and if you haven't seen it, you should. And apparently there was an organized group down in Australia that is basically running around Australia arranging screenings of Vaxxed. And apparently they are now being attacked in the media by so-called health authorities. How dare you question our decision in mandating vaccines? And the pressure has reached the point where the activist group, the Australian Vaccination Skeptics Network, they're selling tickets for the screenings. They're having to notify the people who buy the tickets just hours before the screening where it's going to take place so that the venue doesn't get yanked from them. They're still out there trying to protect that vaccine industrial complex. Now, believe it or not, in the British Medical Journal, they're going to be running a story about a lady, 57-year-old woman, Dynica Ferguson, who came down with myeloma cancer. And she underwent 3 rounds of chemotherapy, 4 stem cell transplants with no effect. She's going to die. And then she read an interview in a magazine about an alternative treatment. Turmeric, the spice, the cooking spice. You can get it at your supermarkets. And so she basically just started eating a lot of that with her food, and she's getting better. It's 5 years since the point where she thought she was on the verge of the death, and her doctor said, you've only got a couple of weeks to live. It's now been 5 years. And they're actually reporting this in the British Medical Journal. Article coming out of naturalnews.com. Antibiotic drugs found to cause harmful damage to the environment even after being consumed by patients. And that is because that these drugs, even after you ingest, if you don't metabolize them all, they come out in your bathroom, and they're out there causing harm to the environment because they're killing microbes that are beneficial. And if you look at the sheer volume of antibiotics being prescribed just here in the United States of America, you'll realize this is a significant problem. But again, it makes money. And in this country, anything that makes money is beyond reproach and beyond question. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to take a phone call from Jack in Georgia. Aloha, Jack. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Michael. This is Jack from Georgia. I've read somewhere that one of the main reasons for the sanctions against Russia and Iran is that Israel is developing its own natural gas, and they want to sell their own gas to Europe. So, I mean, this is good old-fashioned protectionism.
Well, yeah, but the problem is the gas that Israel wants to sell to Europe is from underneath the Golan and technically is the property of Syria,
right,
as well as what they're taking from offshore of the Gaza Strip, which technically belongs to the Palestinians. So any company...
Right. Yeah, it's also the area between Cyprus and Lebanon, Israel. They're going to drill for all kinds of goodies. So, I mean, they consider that whatever is in the Golan, they consider that their own. So, I mean, we haven't heard of that angle, so I wanted your thoughts on that. I mean, that's a very important reason.
Well, it is a very important reason, and that's one of the reasons why Germany is talking about retaliatory sanctions against the U.S., because the new Russian sanctions endanger the Nord Stream pipeline project, which is going to bring Russian gas into Europe while bypassing Ukraine, which has become obviously very unstable, and Poroshenko could just shut those valves anytime he feels like it. I mean, this is a legitimate question here. At some point, we're going to start seeing the rest of the world sanction the United States.
The thing is, the Europeans are kind of vassals. They just all talk, and they say things, but then they will, like France. A few years ago, they got a big fine of several $1 billion. The biggest bank. Paribas, I think.
Yes.
And first they bitched, then they paid 8, 9, 10 billion. So the same thing with the helicopter carrier that the Russians paid for them to build or half built.
Yes.
And then they wouldn't. It was ready. They wouldn't give it back to the Russians, etc., etc.
Well, that was under pressure from the United States.
Right. Yeah, so I mean they ordered the Congress to vote for those draconian sanctions. So sounds like a good old-fashioned mercantilism or protectionism, or I don't know what the word is.
Well, protectionism is a good one, and I have no doubt that Israel is viewing these developments from that perspective. But again, none of these things happen for a single reason. It's an overlapping of differing agendas. Certainly from Israel's point of view, it's shutting off that alternate natural gas supply. Certainly from the point of view of the Pentagon, it's goading Russia towards an actual conflict. Same thing with the military-industrial complex. And again, from Trump's point of view, it's trying to prove to the world that he's a tough guy. But like I said earlier in the show, I'm getting a strong sense, reading the foreign media, that the rest of the world is just about fed up with the U.S. government's arrogance and meddling.
You mean the European media? I mean, this is what counts in this case for the natural gas. You've read that from the European media, the French, the German?
I'm reading it from the European media. I'm reading it from the Asian media, the Australian media. It's a global phenomenon. They've just about had it with the U.S. government throwing their weight around.
Okay. We'll see. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to let you go here. And let's see. We're talking about the poor state of healthcare in the United States. We have the most expensive healthcare on earth and the absolute worst of all industrialized nations. And it's all about pushing product. And it doesn't even matter if the product isn't even working. And we're looking at this story that came out of the Daily Mail, that drugs being prescribed to treat osteoporosis actually have the opposite effect and make your bones more prone to fracture. And apparently the drugs actually make the bones much more brittle. They alter the composition of the bone, and the bone is more brittle and easier to break. Wonderful medication. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to take 2 more phone calls. James in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? James,
yeah.
There you are.
Hello, Mike. I wanted to know, did you know that North Korea has a very favorable stance with, like, the Free Palestine movement and everything? Like, they're very vocal about that every time they go to the UN. And it strikes me as kind of curious of how you see it, North Korea on the news and war and everything. And it seems like it always goes back to that same provocator. Like I think you said about one time you made a report about the American Al-Qaeda, and it later became that the person wasn't even a Muslim or
yes,
even an Arab to begin with, something like that, right?
Yeah, it was. I think that was. Well, he was Jewish. Adam Kokesh. No, not Kokesh. Adam
Joseph Cohn, right? I think that's what his name.
I forget his name, but yeah, the American Al Qaeda, and he was posing as a Muslim, and he was out there saying all this inflammatory stuff, and it turned out he was the grandson of one of the founders of the ADL. Perlman, Adam Perlman, that's it. Thank you.
Wow. It seems kind of crazy how we could go to war with the nation just because they say something about another nation that they're doing bad. And it's kind of crazy too that we're going to go to war while giving, I think you also reported that we just gave Israel our F-35, like a technology. Like we just gave it to them?
Well, technically they're buying it, but they're buying it with money that was given to them by the Congress.
So that's like giving it to them, right?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
And they go and refurbish this, and then they go and sell it off, and that's how they make most of their money?
Yeah, Israel has a long history of reverse engineering weapons provided to them by the United States and then selling the technology to countries who are not necessarily our friends. I mean, remember when Jonathan Pollard stole all those nuclear secrets and sold them to Israel? Israel turned around and traded them to the Soviet Union in exchange for increased immigration quotas. And had the U.S. and the Soviet Union gone to nuclear war at that moment, the United States would have lost.
So could we be going into a bloodbath then? Could the reason why North Korea is being so blissful and so, like, hey, we don't care, is because they know how to take down our planes and stuff? I mean, not fully, but have the means to do serious damage, unlike, Iraq or Libya, even Syria, like really serious damage.
Well, no,
almost like the way Yemen's doing to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's true. Yemen's doing amazingly well against Saudi Arabia. No, Kim Jong-un's bluster is mostly about face, about looking like he's strong to his own people. And he's actually starting to get more admirers in the region because he is standing up to the U.S. bully, which is something very few world leaders have the guts to do.
But it's not the U.S., right? It's not the U.S. The U.S. is getting pushed into doing stuff. They're not even. They don't even want to do it. They're getting pushed by another nation.
Okay, James. Okay, I'm going to say this one more time. Wars, assassinations, events on this scale never happen for just one reason. Okay, there's an overlapping series of agendas, and certainly from Israel's point of view, they would love to see regime change in North Korea because of North Korea's support for Palestine. On the other hand, we cannot rule out that North Korea actually purchased their early nuclear weapons technology from Israel, because we know Israel has been selling nuclear technology under the table to other countries, such as the former government of South Africa.
So technically that's what I mean. They have this is suicide then. This is like, doesn't make any sense. And, you know, you have all these things, like even the migration. Did you hear that Israel is sending doctors in ships to pick up these migrants that are coming from North Africa, and they're giving them medical treatment and giving them information? That's who these left-wing NGOs are. A lot of them are Israeli-backed.
Well, George Soros. I mean, Israel's fully on board with blending all of the other world's populations together into a single, unrecognizable mass. But that doesn't apply to Israel. Israel's out there saying, "Oh yes, open borders, except for us. You know, we have to preserve our racial purity." Sig Heil, Sig Heil. Okay.
Yeah, it just seems crazy how they got us fighting over pennies while they're doing all this stuff, and they got all the corruption. I mean, did you know that
Israel doesn't like to fight its own wars? Israel's got, that's what the American Goy are for, to fight Israel's wars for them.
But did you know Trump's labor secretary is Alexander Acosta? He was DA for South Florida from 2006 to 2009. He's the one who got Jeff Epstein that sweetheart deal of a sentence.
Yes.
It's just crazy. It's just really sad though, because people, there's been a lot of killing and it doesn't feel right. It feels like something's gonna. It just doesn't. It's not right on so many levels. It's so much not right. It just. I was there in Iraq when we built the wall in Baghdad.
Mm-hmm.
When we built the wall inside our city. There's going to be retaliation, I feel. Like you say, we're probably going to be Germany. We're
going to have the entire world against us. I mean, we're already seeing Russia and China moving together. Iran is moving toward Russia. Turkey is moving toward Russia. We're going to be up against a formidable enemy. The U.S. plan to simply pick off the rest of the world one country at a time is not going to work, because the rest of the world now sees that's what's coming. And they're going to reach a point where they say it's time for all of us to unite against this American aggression. And, because if we don't unite, the U.S. is going to pick us off one by one. James, I got to let you go. We're running out of time on the show, and I got a couple more calls I need to get to. George in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, how you doing, Mike? Hope you had a great weekend.
Yes.
But anyway, with Debbie Wasserman Schultz and a lot of these corrupt congressmen, and how they just get away with even practically murder. The thing is,
there's nothing practical about it. They get away with murder. I mean, nothing's being done about Seth Rich. Nothing's being done about that prosecutor who washed up on the beach in Debbie Wasserman Schultz's district down in Florida. Nothing's being done about that Wall Street Journal editorial writer. All we're getting from them is we presume it was a suicide, but we're not releasing the official cause of death.
The thing is, I'm just saying, with all this going on, we the American people owe a big apology to the late, great James Traficant, who had the courage to stand up to the Israelis and get a guy that they claimed that was Ivan the Terrible, who actually wasn't, out of jail. And they still went after him.
Well, look at Cynthia McKinney when she stood up and accused Israel of using cluster munitions against civilians, and look how AIPAC organized to get her kicked out of Congress.
Well, I think we ought to do it may be a long shot, but a White House petition demanding Donald Trump enforce the law forcing AIPAC to register as a foreign agent. Because they should be a foreign agent.
They are a foreign agent. There's no question about it. And as is typical with anything connected with Israel, the rules don't apply to them. And they should. They absolutely should. I mean, AIPAC has been caught in scandal after scandal after scandal. There was a big stink, I think, back in the late 90s, where the then president of AIPAC was literally bragging, where, he could take a napkin from the table at the restaurant and in the space of an hour have every member of Congress autograph on it. And it was absolute bravado. Somebody got it on tape, and it caused a big upset. Because AIPAC doesn't want American people understanding just how much control Israel has over our government. But again, Congress can't agree on health care for the American people, but whatever Israel wants, its overwhelming majority is voted through.
Well, and I support Israel. I support the people of Israel because they're getting fed up over there.
Yes.
They're getting fed up with the corruption. And believe me, Netanyahu's no more a Christian than Anton LaVey. I hate to say that, but it's true.
Netanyahu never claimed to be Christian.
I say and the thing is, I pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and that is remove Netanyahu because even Steve Pieczenik says Israel's become a petulant child that throws a tantrum, don't get its way. And I know
it always
Israel's
has been to an extent. It always has been. But ever since 9/11, Israel's arrogance and demanding from the U.S. has gone right through the roof. And I'm convinced that Israel is holding 9/11 over the entire U.S. government. Do what we say or we'll reveal what really happened on 9/11, and it'll be worse for you than it is for us because everybody expects Israel to do this kind of thing. But for the U.S. government to be behind this false flag, that could bring the entire U.S. government down, and it probably would.
Well, I'm just saying with Israel, like I say, they're a petulant child, and even like I say, Steve Pieczenik called it out, and even a lot of people in the military, I think, in the military rank and file are starting tired of Israel too.
Yes.
And the thing is, I won't go visit Israel, but the reason is you don't have no religious freedom there. I mean, and I hear like the Palestinians, like Hamas, Hamas and Hezbollah are these evil terrorist organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Hezbollah is the only military element keeping the ISIS from invading Lebanon.
Or Israel, for that matter. Now, let's be very clear here. It's not just China that's acting like a spoiled, petulant child. That applies to pretty much every politician on the planet, especially members of our own Congress. Look how they reacted when Trump won. That was a whole room full of petulant children throwing tantrums on the ground there. As far as Israel's concerned, in happier times, I actually wanted to visit Israel. I'd like to tour the biblical sites, but I understand that, Claire and I would be shot dead as we stepped off the airplane if we ever dared go there now.
I heard through back channels certain reports that Netanyahu was livid when Trump cut off the CIA program arming ISIS.
Yeah.
So, and I was hearing, too, that secretly Israel wants to hand back over to Syria the Golan Heights. And, and I hear, like I say, on the surface, I don't think Israel and Donald Trump are really seeing eye to eye.
Well, I don't think they are. And in response to that, of course, Israel is now demanding that the world recognize that the Golan is part of Israel anyway. It should be part of Israel. We stole it fair and square. You might as well say that, yes, it's part of Israel. Anyway, George, I need to let you go. We're running out of time. I'm going to take one more phone call, and then we're going to finish up with some news stories here. Chris in St. Petersburg, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Now, you're mentioning an article that said that bone osteoporosis, bone-enhancing drugs are causing osteoporosis? Is that
no? It's not causing osteoporosis, but apparently one of the drugs side effects, and this is the low end of the drug spectrum. It's a specific series of drugs. What it's doing is over time, it's actually altering the chemical structure of the bone itself that makes it much more brittle. And therefore, even though you may not technically have osteoporosis, the bone is easier to fracture anyway. So what we have here is a drug that's sold at a huge cost that, in terms of the practical objective of making your bones less prone to breakage, absolutely does not work.
Yeah, that's been known for decades, that the bisphosphonate class of drugs,
that's it,
like Boniv and Fosamax, that they do cause more brittle bones and necrosis of the jawbone, which is death of the bone, and which causes people to lose their entire jaw, if not their lives. So if you want to check out the bisphosphonate class, there are several other drugs that come under that class. But what I would encourage, because it's worked so well for me, is a supplement called microcrystalline hydroxyapatite, or MCHA, that has been shown to increase bone density and mass up to 30% per year. That has been validated by the originators, Ethical Nutrients, back in '96 when the Federal Trade Commission sued them, and they jumped through all the hoops, including so many that they didn't have to, but they ended up proving that claim that it does increase bone density and mass up to 30% per year. There are several brands that do sell MCHA, but no pharmaceutical drug or any other form of calcium can come close. And I remember I had loose teeth, and within a very short time they tightened up. I ran out of my supplement, and they got loose again, and started taking it. They got my bone density improved.
Okay, we're almost to the commercial break here. You're sounding like a commercial yourself there, but I'd like to ask you to email me information about this. I'd like to take a closer look at this. Because it's becoming more and more obvious every day. The products put out by the pharmaceutical industrial complex are all about making money. They're not really very good, and the government, of course, is trying to shut down any competition, even if what the competition has is a better product. And that, of course, is a classic hallmark of fascism right there. All right, well, listen, we're going to let you go, and thank you very much. Quick little note here, Charlotte, I think it's pronounced Iserbit, will be John Stadmiller's guest today. So following our program, you want to stay tuned to that. Probably going to be a very, very interesting discussion. Interesting article. This is out of RINF.com, and it's talking about a Win Gallup International poll of 69 countries ranking how happy the people are. And basically at the very top of the scale was Fiji, with 89% of the people were happy. The global average is 59%. The United States is down at 48%. We're below the global average. This is not a happy country any longer. We'll be right back with the last segment of our program today. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Last segment of our program today here. Interesting little article coming out of Tech Republic. Windows 10, 5 reasons to avoid Microsoft's flagship operating system. And they lead right off basically saying Microsoft's capricious and obnoxious treatment of Windows users is a reason to give Windows 10 a mess. Now, Microsoft is pushing Windows 10 because they're trying to move to a business model of computing as a service that you pay for month after month after month after month. And yeah, Microsoft has been extraordinarily unresponsive in supporting anything other than Windows 10. I still to this day have never been able to install my license of 3D Studio Max on my Windows 7 machine, and everybody's pointing fingers at each other. More recently, as I mentioned, we had to replace Claire's phone. We got her back on an iPhone, and all of a sudden the iTunes will not see her Windows Outlook. And Apple isn't interested because they want you to use the cloud. And interestingly enough, I couldn't get iCloud for Windows to install. And Microsoft isn't interested in supporting anything that isn't Windows 10. And we've reached a stage, again, like ancient Rome, where our technology has become so decadent, bloated, and complex, we've lost the ability to manage it effectively. And all of these corporations' focus is all about selling the new whiz-bang product and pushing the agenda of computing as a service. And going back to that 1970s models of giant mainframes out there that hold all the data and all the applications and all of your personal electronic devices are merely terminals into their computers. And it has resulted in an operating environment where more and more people are just saying, yeah, the gizmos are nice to play with, but it's getting more and more difficult to actually get useful work done on any of this stuff. Now, Amazon has finally suspended sales of their $60 blue Android phone after discovering that they still secretly send user data to China 8 months after the company that manufactures the device claimed the spyware was a mistake. And that is becoming a growing problem as well, that the devices you are using have malware on them at the point of sale, at the point of manufacture. And I'm not just talking about what the NSA is putting in there. I'm talking about organized crime, making a deal with somebody at the companies to add some surreptitious code for their benefit. And that, too, is completely out of control. And where is the NSA in all of this? For that matter, why didn't the NSA uncover the Amwan brothers spying on the entire House of Representatives? Talk about an epic fail. And finally, apparently, Reince Priebus, a prankster posing as Reince Priebus, apparently tricked former White House Communications Director Scaramucci into a bitter email spat, underscoring the fact that the emails you're getting may not be from the people that you think they are. So be cautious. There's the music. Stay tuned for John Stedmiller's show. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, aloha, America.